Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlin. When you are feeling anxious, what do you do about it? Do you know there are actually hacks we can go to that will reduce our anxiety quite quickly? Well, I'm here with Dr. Laura Saunders, who tells us there are easy ways we can actually remember to calm our anxiety in the moment. Welcome, Doctor.
Hello, Kara. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anxiety, of course, is that feeling of worry, nervousness, unease. And I know they say, 80% of Americans suffer? It seems like everyone probably suffers from it at some point or another.
Yeah. So there is so much to talk about when it comes to anxiety. And I think it's really, really important to remember that anxiety is often something that you physically feel in your body. So sometimes when we talk about strategies to reduce our anxiety, we're going sort of to the neuroscience of it. It is true that, most everyone has, we all have anxiety. It's whether or not that anxiety is debilitating on a regular basis or in some way hinders your functioning. But we all get anxiety. And in fact, anxiety is not necessarily a bad thing. And I do like to remind people that it's not necessarily a bad thing. Anxiety can be useful to motivate us to step into something or to do something or to remind us about something. So anxiety in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's when our emotional arousal gets so high that it hinders our functioning, even in the moment. Like even if we need to do something or perform or take a test or do a presentation at work. There's things that you can do to lower your anxiety that are physical.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. Sometimes when you're anxious, the struggle is even remembering what you want to do, but you have an easy acronym, Muse, right? So let's start with M. What do we do with M?
So in the acronym Muse, M is for movement. Get up. Move your body. I frequently say move a muscle, change a mood. So you physically get up, get out of your chair, walk, pace a little, go into another room, come back. A beautiful thing would be to go outside, let cool air kind of hit you, really feel that sort of refreshing air. So just sometimes moving also changes and helps shift that anxiety, because now you're actually burning energy. And I'm not even talking about like rigorous exercise, simply moving your position, changing your visual space, physically moving your body can really help burn those chemicals that get created when anxiety happens.
Okay. E is for externalize, and you want us to find a point somewhere outside of ourselves.
Yes. So if we think about it, anxiety, as I said, is so physical. It's literally in the body. We know that the gut and the stomach have like this anxiety connection. When a child says to you, I have a stomach ache, it may be that they're anxious. It may be not, may not be that they have a stomach bug or flu or something, but that they have anxiety. So it's externalized. So move the feeling away from your internal, like my stomach hurts, my head hurts, my arm hurts, whatever it is, and externalize. So find a point outside of your body. Could be on a wall, it could be a picture, it could be, looking outside a window. It takes the focus away from your internal body. So you allow your mind to really experience that. Another strategy is what we call the five senses. So I'm looking at, now I'm staring at a tree, a beautiful ginkgo tree outside my window. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? What do I taste? What do I touch? So you can use your five senses, but it's getting you away from that internal feeling and more looking to externalize kind of what's going on.
And W is for welcome. And I think this is where we all struggle, right? As soon as you feel anxious, you're like, I want to get rid of it, want to get rid of it. That's actually the opposite of what we should be doing if we want to calm it.
Well, people have so much fear around anxiety. And understandably, it's a very, very uncomfortable feeling. I'm not minimizing that. What I'm saying is we need to almost welcome it into our life, because the more we try to push it away, the more it just comes back to us. So by welcoming it, it's all right, my stomach hurts, my head hurts, my arm hurts, my throat's tight, my heart's racing, whatever it is. Okay, I'm anxious. So now I've labeled it, right? I'm anxious. I know why I'm anxious because this is happening. Or maybe you don't know why you're anxious, right? It's called generalized anxiety. It's just sort of free floating. But I'm anxious. Is there a reason why I'm anxious? No. Or yes, there is a reason why I'm anxious. Okay, now I've labeled it. Now I can identify it. And you just accept it. I know why I'm anxious. I know you're here for a reason. I can manage this. I can do this. So it's acknowledging that it's also there to protect you in some way. So you're not as fearful about what is going on inside of you.
So labeling it, like what the source of the anxiety is actually helpful. For instance, all right, I'm really anxious because I'm about to give this speech.
Yeah, because otherwise what happens is, and so often, right, when we talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, right? So what are the thoughts in your head? What are the feelings in your body? How are we going to make the connection between how the thoughts in your head are connected to your behaviors? And then how can we sort of break some of those negative patterns? So the thoughts in your head, you might have racing thoughts. You might be thinking over and over and over something, you might be ruminating about something in a what we call kind of more of a circular way. So it's identifying, okay, what is going on right now? My heart is racing, my stomach is tight. This is what I'm feeling. Oh, wait, I just heard this piece of information and this is upsetting to me. I feel upset. I feel anxious. Because the more you label it, then you can actually address it because you've labeled it, and now we're going to take it to the next level.
And S, you say that stands for square breathing, something that we've talked about on CURES before. I think it's such a great, easy thing. You can even teach it to kids. But what is square breathing?
So square breathing really is exactly as it sounds. You imagine the four sides of a square, and you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. So breathe in for 4, breathe, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. What it does is it slows down your breathing. So one of the things that anxiety does for us is it creates physiological symptoms in our body. We're breathing faster, our heart might be racing, as I said, a stomach might be tightening. So what this does is it slows your breathing down, which then helps slow down your your heart rate and some of the other physical symptoms, and it allows oxygen to get to your brain. And when oxygen gets to your brain, we all think more clearly. So it's just a way, it's a very simple technique. You can do it at any time. No one else needs to know that you're doing it, that you just breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and then hold for 4. Pretty simple.
Yeah. And the idea is that we have these two nervous systems, right? And we've got one that's fight or flight, which is, I guess, activated when we're anxious. And just even people knowing that, hey, you've got these two nervous systems. Let's get you back to the rest and digest, or the part where we feel calm. And that we can do that by slowing down our breath. So our breath is critical. It's free. It's with us all the time. You don't have to be a Tibetan monk or an expert meditator. We just need to slow down our breathing.
Yes. Right. So, I don't need to get into all the science of it, but we have our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous systems, right? So what we're trying to do is really engage that part of our nervous system to physically help us. So one of the things that you can do is engage the vagus nerve, which is a way to also help reduce anxiety. So the way that you engage the vagus nerve is by humming, or rolling your R's, or opening your mouth wide, doing an ah. So that'll stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. So that is your rest and digest system. So when you are, it's fight, flight, or freeze. Sometimes people forget about that freeze part because that's actually a fairly common reaction in a high anxiety situation. Fight, flight, or freeze. So the other side to that is rest and digest. So that's when our internal system gets working because we're not in a state of crisis, right? And that's what the sort of the cortisol and your anxiety does for you, so we can rest and digest. But stimulating that vagus nerve is a way that also, from a neuroscience perspective, can slow your heart rate down. It can slow your breathing down. It's often used in yoga. And yoga, I believe, is called like ujjayi breathing, right? It's just it's a way to kind of breathe from deep inside of you, but it stimulates that vagus nerve.
Yeah, so, think of it deep belly breaths or whatever, but there's a lot on the internet about vagus nerve hacks. So this is, I love that we're hearing it from you. It's a real thing. We have this vagus nerve. You say it's actually something that causes our brain freeze when we have something too cold.
Right. I love that little fun fact. So that the vagus nerve is what gets sort of, doesn't really get frozen, but when we have that brain freeze, it's the vagus nerve, because it's from ice cream or eating ice. And one of the ways that you deal with the brain freeze is actually you put your tongue to the roof of your mouth, and that'll help sort of warm up your vagus nerve a little bit and decrease that brain freeze. So it's not as relevant now because it's still fairly cold, but come the summer, you're going to want to remember that little vagus nerve trick.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing, and all these little hacks, and we're seeing that a lot on social media, right? All these different life hacks, but this is really a hack for our mental health, because we're all experiencing anxiety from time to time. And I just want to review, in case people are like, what is that again? It's Muse. So Muse, M is for movement. We've got E for externalize, W for welcome the anxiety. It's there for a reason. And S is for the square breathing. So just remember, it's your Muse.
Right. And similarly, we want people to feel empowered. Mm-hmm. So that's what life hacks are, right? Life hacks are all over social media. And I always like to know the sources of some of the hacks, because I think sometimes they're made up. But these are science-backed life hacks, ways to reduce anxiety in the moment. And so whether it's using Muse, movement, externalizing, welcoming the anxiety, or square breathing, or you're just in a place you can't always stimulate your vagus nerve, like in the middle of a meeting, right? You can do square breathing when no one knows what you're doing, but you can't necessarily sort of vibrate your vagus nerve with sounds in a meeting or at other times. But so there are some things that we can do to empower ourselves to take charge of our not just our life, but our emotional moments, and feel like we have tools and strategies to manage that.
Yeah, well, when I speak to groups and stuff, and we talk about this in the modern day, like corporate world, or where we're all busy and you can't, as you said, go but the bathroom can really be a sanctuary, even before, if you think you're going to be anxious, right? Even maybe going and doing some of these things, of the finding a point, doing some deep breathing, really feeling your feet on the ground, any of that, enacting these Muse, like before you go into a place where you're going to be anxious. Could it work then too?
Absolutely. So, I mean, these, I think of it as a bell curve, sort of when you're at the height of your anxiety, so you think of a bell curve. When you're at the absolute height of your anxiety, that's often not a good time to use these strategies. They're not as helpful when you're at the height of your anxiety. These kind of strategies work best when you're at the beginning, when you're in the early stages, when you're like, wait, my stomach feels really tight, or my throat's kind of closing or dry. I feel my heart racing. So you're just at the beginning. You're not in a full-blown panic attack or anxiety attack, because it'll be hard to do square breathing at that time. So we use these strategies right at the beginning, and it really is about knowing ourselves, knowing what our patterns are, knowing the things that trigger us. The more we get to know ourselves, the better we can manage and feel empowered that no matter what happens to me, I have a strategy or tool to fix it.
Well, and I've known people in my own family or friends who experienced panic attacks, and usually what happens is I think why you get so anxious is you don't know if it means you're having a medical event, and so sometimes it can take on a life, like I'm having a heart attack, right? Oh my gosh, I thought I was dying, my heart was pounding. Is there any way to know at that moment, like when you're going through something like that, this is emotional or this is physical? Because that would probably help people. I know sometimes people have run to the urgent care, why? And then say, oh, you're okay, you're having a panic attack.
So I think it has to do with patterns of behavior. The first time it happens to someone, they may believe that they're having a heart attack, or that they're having an explosive migraine. So it's that first time, I think, that really throws people, but then realizing that it's becoming a pattern, so that when a certain situation happens, or for some people it just sort of like washes over them. And but now, we had to go to the urgent care, or I found out that in fact I don't have a heart issue. So now I know it's anxiety based, and that's not minimizing it, and that's not invalidating it, because in those situations, it really is that your heart is racing. It really is that you're breathing quicker. It really is that your stomach is tight. So I'm not invalidating those symptoms. Those symptoms are real, but there's other strategies to manage it, because we've already ruled out, and that's why if it's, you might need to see your primary care doc, or if you've gone to an urgent care, if it's a more urgent situation. So now we've ruled out the medical. Now we need to use strategies to help ourselves.
Yeah. So Muse is something good to remember. I know for some people, they'll wake up in the middle of the night, especially after grief or loss. They might just feel like they're having that problem too. Like, oh my gosh, my heart's racing. What if I die like this person who I just lost? Or there's and I've heard there's some sympathy of that too, that you lose someone close and then you think it's going to happen to you. But so some of these extreme cases where you're in the middle of it, you woke up and you don't know what to do with yourself.
Right. And so what you're identifying there, Kara, really are the cognitions, right? The thoughts that come into your head, that what we call like catastrophic thoughts, of, well, oh my God, what if? So it's catching yourself or labeling them, right? What we call those thoughts is cognitive distortions. So those cognitive distortions are tricks that your mind plays on you, that you go right to that catastrophic place. Because when you go to that catastrophic place, what you need to do is say, it's the middle of the night. There's nothing identified wrong with me. I know that this person died of this thing, but that's not me. I'm separate, right? You have to use strategies to sort of decrease that level of heightened arousal. And so, right, we could do a whole segment on cognitive distortions, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and we all catch ourselves, or I do, I know, like, oh, I think I might be catastrophizing. I mean, they say like the worst things that happen in your life really always happen in your head, not in real life.
Right.
When your child doesn't come home for curfew and you already imagine they're off on the side of the road somewhere, and all those things. So I guess what you're saying is, when we notice that, if we can just take that breath, that pause, that awareness, we can move back to our rational brain and then calm our body. And if we calm our body, our mind will start to follow.
Yes. Yes, these kind of strategies are meant to help you get back to your rational mind. When you're in your emotion mind, that's when it's harder to think clearly, but we can get you back to your rational mind, where you can say, okay, all right, I know I'm upset right now, but I need to do something to help myself. Do I need to get up out of my chair? Do I need to walk outside and come back? Do I need to do a little circle around the building, whatever it is, around the house? Do things to help yourself and feel empowered, like, I can manage this, I can do this. And again, it is in fact true that sometimes anxiety gets to the point where it completely debilitates the individual or hinders their ability to function, and then you need to seek out a professional. But I'd like people to believe that there's lots of things that they can do on their own before they get to that point.
Yeah, and not that seeking out a professional is bad, but even going to a professional is, you're going to be teaching these types of skills. It's still within you. Right. Perhaps you might need a medication, if there's all those kinds of things. But in the meantime, doing these kinds of things, can really, really help. I know you advocate also just like the daily, whether you want to call it meditation or just having a few moments of breathing with a mantra. I'm safe, I'm happy. The reason that we do those things, maybe a couple minutes every day, even on a non-anxious day, is that because we're kind of training ourselves, like we're learning when things aren't so stressful?
Yes. So this is not another one of my little expressions, right? Coping skills are like vitamins. So when someone is very ill, vitamins don't really help them, right? But getting your daily vitamins actually helps stave off other bigger problems. So using coping skills It's like taking vitamins, doing things on a daily basis so that your stress level doesn't get to the peak of that bell curve, or so that your depression doesn't hit that bottom. So doing things on a regular basis to be mindful of your own mind and your body and what's helpful for you. So coping skills and strategies like this are like vitamins. They're things that we need to do every day to help ourselves, because when we're at the height of that panic attack, that might not be the time that you can do square breathing.
Right, right. So doing that every day and then building that practice. Would you use Muse for kids too? I know you are a child psychologist. I like the acronym. I don't know if kids know what a Muse is, but is it the same for kids? Do we teach them about these same strategies? You've got two nervous systems. Is breathing's going to help you?
Yeah, see, that's the beauty of techniques or strategies like this, is that they're fairly simple. So they're easy to teach to kids. If you know that you have a child that, comes in with a stomach ache right before the start of school every morning, or when they, before they go to bed at night, they're, you can tell that it's anxiety, that they can't actually fall asleep because their thoughts are sort of racing in their head. All right, so, before you go to bed every night, we're going to have you do 10 jumping jacks, right? And those 10 jumping jacks or sit-ups or whatever you want to do, that's going to help move those thoughts out of your mind and release them so that your body can rest. So you're also kind of planting a suggestion there also. So yes, these are easy things to do to teach kids to like focus at a point on the wall and think about that point, or to do like the 5 senses, right? Where are you? Look at a point. What do you see, feel, hear? The 5 senses. So you go through the 5 senses. So these kind of strategies are simple enough to remember and use. And often what people find is that 1 or 2 things they tend to go to more often. Like, I'm someone who likes to sort of get up out of my chair and go for a little walk and just like clear my mind. I know that that's a go-to for me. And also I love the breathing. So, right, knowing what works for you best, and that would work for your children as well.
Yeah, and the more they do it, then they can figure out what really works. What about beyond the breathing, which is a physical thing? Are there other physical things? For instance, certain foods. I know also on CURES, we've talked about having green tea. It has L-theanine in it, which is a natural calming agent. Or like, what about the simple act of going and getting a big glass of water? Some people think having a glass of water will calm them down. Is there some truth to that?
Yeah, I think what happens in these situations is we develop associations. And through those and so once you do it a few times, I feel anxious, I get a glass of water. So what happens in the act of getting a glass of water? You focused on something outside of yourself. You're taking the time. I mean, you can't just like, it's not just a sip of water. You're taking time to breathe in between sips of water. So you're slowing your breathing down. So you're actually doing other things as well that are all part of that one activity that encompass some of these same things. So that act of drinking a glass of water means that you're taking time to externalize and be outside of yourself, and you move to a different room. So you're really doing things that can be extremely helpful. It seems like a simple glass of water, but it's using some of these same techniques.
How important is it to get good sleep and eat well as far as reducing your anxiety?
So sleep and nutrition are the low-hanging fruit of mental health. One of the 2 easiest ways to make improvements to our mental health are by getting better sleep and adequate nutrition. It helps our mood and our energy. So that's what adequate nutrition and good enough sleep do for us, is it helps our mood and our energy. And when our mood and our energy are better, we have a better ability to use a strategy to help ourselves, or to move ourselves through anxious moments. So those are always the low-hanging fruit.
The doctor's in the house. Hold on, whoever's calling Dr. Saunders. We have her right now.
That's right.
So no, I think this is really helpful, and I think that for people, especially when they're not maybe they're not used to going to a therapist or doing shows like this where we talk about it all the time, it's really hard to think that there isn't something really wrong with you when your body is acting like that. And I'll hear that all the time, like, I really don't feel well, my stomach hurts, or I must be sick. And just the complete disconnect or kind of not believing that there couldn't be something really wrong with you because you keep having these stomach aches, or every day your blood pressure's going up. And so we want people to go to the doctor and rule it out. But just to be clear, you can absolutely have these really somatic experiences from anxiety.
Yeah, and those symptoms are real. I don't want to invalidate people's physical symptoms. And if for some people it might be necessary to see their primary care doctor, their pediatrician, to rule out any medical medical causes. But it doesn't mean that you still don't have stomach aches, or that your arm hurts, or that you're having headaches, or whatever it is. The physical symptoms are real, and I don't want to invalidate that. However, there are strategies that you can use that will help minimize the anxiety that might be a contributing factor.
So in our final couple of minutes to get together, what's the opposite? You've given us some great things to do. What are kind of the worst things we should do when we start to feel anxious that are really going to leave us a lot worse off?
So I think ignoring it is probably one of the worst things that you can do. I think, feeding your anxiety is not a good strategy. Becoming more sedentary, using substances to manage your anxiety. Those are things that you don't want to do, because what happens is they make it even more difficult for you. So if you're using substances, that affects your sleep. If you're, if you're not eating well, that's and becoming more sedentary, that means you're not kind of moving your body and burning off those neurochemicals that are caused by anxiety. So there's things that you can do that will actually worsen it. And I think ignoring it probably is the worst.
Okay, ignoring it. Don't ignore it. Instead, we go back to the Muse. We want to accept it, label it, maybe ask it why it's here, actually talk to it, and it can really help. And is there a time limit? I'll say we have a time limit, it's out of time, but I'll ask you real quick. Is there, in general, if you do these things, about how long it takes to settle? Is it quickly?
It should be fairly quick. I mean, it should be that once you get up out of your chair, move to another room, allow your mind to focus on something outside of yourself fairly quickly. I mean, I'm not saying it goes away and it never comes back again, but those are strategies to sort of take the edge off the anxiety and make it better able so that you can think clearly. They should work fairly quickly.
Okay.
But also, I'd like to point out, just because you do something one time doesn't mean it's all better, right? Often we have to run through multiple strategies to see which one works for us and which one works in that particular occasion.
Okay. We'll leave it there. Dr. Laura Saunders, thank you so much for the easy life hacks that we need to remember. Next time anxiety comes knocking on our door, we really appreciate you taking your time.
Please take care, Kara.
You too, and be well. And everyone else watching as well, if you want more content on the cutting edge of wellness, please follow me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Kara Sundlin. You can also join the Facebook group, Kara's Cures. And if this content was helpful to you, you're listening on the podcast, please share it with your friends and family so they also can have this empowering information. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.